no such thing as perfect parenting. So many of us are striving to do everything right, to be the perfect parent. And some of us gave up on that long ago and are just trying to get through the day and be good enough. I can't even tell you how many times I've gotten the Bad Mommy Award. When you were born, Shannon, man, I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't believe they were going to let me take this precious little tiny baby home with me. And I've been working with kids. I had an education in early childhood. You know, I was supposed to know something, but it was like, oh my God, I don't know anything. I don't know what I'm doing. I was sure every car on the road was aimed right at us. And then we had this very happy, bouncy dog, and I was just sure he was going to maul you. And anyway, I was terrified. Things got better, and then Justin came along. And then that was a whole nother thing, you know, and that met with having to balance not only parenting, but I was back at work after 3 days, which was not the plan. But now here I am, you know, trying to be a working mom way too soon. Anyway, it's just there's all of us have our stories and these pieces that we feel, you know, we've got the fear and the self-doubt and we feel guilty and often we're frustrated and sometimes we just don't know what to do. And then we end up, you know, having a toddler with a temper tantrum right in the middle of the grocery aisle and people are staring at us and we're looking bad and we start to really question our parenting even more and think, oh no, we're raising a spoiled child. Or we look on Instagram and all these perfect moms and feel like we just don't fit and we just start comparing ourselves with all these other parents and, you know, looking at what looks like it's perfect, but it really isn't.
I remember when Henry was little, it was really challenging for me because he developed a lot more quickly physically, probably, than he did like academically or even, you know, the things that we think of as academic skills, but when they're really little. You know, that's not so much that, but like he would be at the very top of a play structure and I would feel judged by other parents because he was so capable, but then there'd be the mom that was like literally running, trying to catch him. And he was fine. And I knew he was fine, but you know, I get stink eye from another mom because I was letting my, you know, 2 year old, he was tiny, go way too high. Happened also when he would climb trees and you know, and then comparing myself because you know by the time he started kindergarten a lot of his peers had no problem you know with reading and you know those kinds of skills and he took a lot longer to develop you know reading and writing kind of skills and so yeah you just constantly are feeling like you know, oh well, needs to do more here, and I am clearly the problem because you know, as parents, I feel like that's what we do. We blame ourselves, and
Mhm.
it's really easy, I think, to fall down that rabbit hole of I need to be doing something differently, or you know, I'm not enough, which you know, then for a lot of parents just spirals, and it can be really, really challenging.
We got to give ourselves, you know, we need to give ourselves a break because every child's different. Every child develops at their own pace, at their own rate. And I mean, look at him now. He's very well balanced. You know, that was really the case with you too. Was you know, you just had to develop into this nice balance. And when I feel like when we are nurturing all the, you know, nurturing the little person in front of us and how they're showing up at any given moment, that's what happens. It all does level out, and they do get to either being able to run and climb or they get to reading and you know doing those things when it's all their time to do that, and we just need to stay cool and not be comparing ourselves all the time. We also have those moments where you know everything just gets to be too much and we're just so frustrated by the constant of, I mean, like, you, H was such an active little guy, just always on the go, and you just had to keep up and stay calm and patient when he's demanding this and demanding that. And I remember my grandma used to talk about my mom and tell me stories about how impatient she'd get with my mom. And every day she'd tell herself, "I'm not going to yell at Nancy. I'm not going to yell at Nancy." And then she'd laugh and say, "And then I rarely made it past breakfast." So you know, it's just we've all got our little things that you know we're juggling with trying to be be parents and do what we need to do for the little people that we have. Um, and we just kind of have to move past that and, remember that, we're doing the best we can. And it does start with us. I mean, our very first principle is it starts with you. So, we need to look inside what's going on for us, because a lot of the time when we feel like we're struggling as parents, it's because we're overtired or we're hangry or we're stressed. Or we've got some other piece going on. So we need to, address that too. What's going on for me? What do I need to meet my own needs? But also, thinking about who do I want to be as a parent? Do I really want to be striving to be this perfect parent, or do I want to be a real parent and really be, create connection and create, a nice relationship with my child? So, I know you had a lot of juggling to do throughout Henry's early years.
Yeah, especially, when Henry was really little, my husband deployed 3 times, I think before he was 4. And so we would have these, 6+ month stretches where it was just him and I. And we had family that was like 3 hours away. And so I did have a lot more support than a lot of, my fellow military spouse peers. But, you definitely get into that slog of the day to day. Like, I got to get this kid to daycare, and then I have to go to work. And then we get home and I'm exhausted because I've been at work all day. And, he's been away from me all day. So he wants my attention, and how to balance all of those competing needs and feeling, like I was on a wire edge of constantly being overstimulated and out of patience, and just really fighting to feel like I was enough for him in those moments. And like that was really, really challenging. And I don't know, trying to figure out, yeah, how to be the best when, at the same time, looking back now, I can recognize, it was a situation where there wasn't an easy, oh, you just do ABC and then everything will be, sunshine and rainbows. The reality was that it was a slog of, however long he was gone to get through, with a child that was really, really active and really, really busy, and, probably would have qualified as like a high needs kid. Um, but, finding ways to take care of myself so that then I could also take care of him. That was, I think, the biggest balance to figure out.
And it's so important. Parents often feel like, they just have to take care of what's going on, and our needs get put on the back burner. But, it's got to be where we're making sure that we find time for us as well, because otherwise you don't have the bandwidth. You don't have the energy to
Yeah, if I had put my needs on the back burner, we both would have crashed and
crash and
burned
burn. Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I wouldn't have been able to take care of us.
Yeah.
And so, what that ended up looking like for us was that I ended up cutting back. So I worked 3/4 time instead of full time, which gave me a little bit more bandwidth to, be present at home. But, that then flipped that whole situation. And I felt like I maybe wasn't the best employee that I could be. So yeah, there were all sorts of fun layers of guilt
Yes.
during that time. And, removed from that now, I can look back and be like, no, I did what needed to be done to take care of me, to take care of him. And, I don't have that lingering guilt anymore. But it definitely took a while to work through, to find, I don't think it was until the second time that he was gone that, we figured out, like, I literally cannot be everything at one time.
Absolutely.
And started to make changes. And, we did end up going down, to my mom's house more frequently so that I had more support, and, trying to find the different balances in that regard too. And so then I could, have at least a shower without some little person in my business, have a couple of bathroom breaks by myself. Yeah. But yeah, it does. It's and it's never going to be a one size fits all. There were things that, worked for H and I and our family that, wouldn't have worked for other families, and vice versa. So, it kind of does have to be that situation where you're, try this, see what works. That doesn't work. All right, throw it out, try something different until you do find something that makes it maybe not easy, but, adds that element of ease into the situation.
And that's one of the biggest pieces for the guiding mindset, and is that it isn't a one size fits all. It's like we need to use the principles. We need to understand who our little person is. What our needs are in a given moment, what their needs are in any given moment, and look at development, all the pieces that come into play. And then we can figure out, what is the best thing to do in this moment for this child, for this situation. So it really does take looking at the whole picture and not trying to just have if A, then B, and everything's going to be hunky dory, because it just doesn't work like that. Children are just too
Absolutely.
different. And it also depends on who we are. What are our own childhood experiences? How were we parented? Because we bring that in. We bring how we were parented in, and that affects our parenting. So we've got to look at ourselves in that regard too. Who do I want to be as a parent, and what's really important to me? What are the most important things I want to give to my child or make sure for them? And if we had less than positive parenting, that's going to affect our abilities unless we really become conscious and we really look at those. So we really want to break those cycles. See who do I want to be and what do I need to do to get there so that we can start to be aware. Know where our buttons are. No, because when those buttons are pushed, and kids are so good at pushing buttons. They're just take one to an elevator. They're going to push all the buttons. So we want to we need to be aware of those buttons that are getting pushed. I know you get to have your buttons pushed every now and then, just a little bit.
And I don't know why, like, of all of the things, I mean, for me, the thing that I think is the absolute hardest is helping Henry with homework. And I have no idea why, but for some reason, we just against each other whenever, that's what he needs to do. And so, I do try and be really present with him when he's doing his, at work after school, just to make sure that it gets done and it's, he's fully grasping these concepts. But it has taken us years to get to a point where we don't both end up insanely frustrated. And don't know, I still to this day don't know why that's one of the things that's the hardest for me. But and so the biggest part for me in resolving that was recognizing it and being like, okay, this is something that we're struggling with. And so I had to do a whole lot of work of I still don't know why exactly, but okay, what do we do with that? So I know this is something that's going to constantly irk me, constantly irritate me. And so, set myself up. Okay, I have water, I have a snack, the same things that I do for him. Mm-hmm. Does he have water? Does he have a snack? We had a routine so that we did homework at the same time pretty much every single day. And it's still not perfect. We still, there'll be times where he gets frustrated because he doesn't want to do it. And I get frustrated because he's frustrated. And everybody's frustrated. But I feel like after the last school year was a little bit better and we were able to, kind of get into a groove finally. But literally years of that being one of the big things that was really challenging for me.
I think you really brought up a good point there is you had your snack and your water. And that, this kind of the same things that you would do for him. And that's true. Our needs aren't that different.
Yeah. If I'm not okay, obviously that's going to trickle into our relationship.
Absolutely.
And, and anything, you can't always plan for everything, obviously, but when you can, it really seems to make a difference when you can, be proactive and try and get on top of those situations before they devolve.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel like one of the things that came out of that was, recognizing that when I did lose my patience with him, that it was really important that we then kind of came back around and reconnected, did a little bit of repair work. Mm-hmm. And, that kept it from turning into, it stayed within that situation. So it wasn't like that then bled into the rest of our relationship. We could butt heads while we were, doing his schoolwork. And then afterwards, it pretty much snapped right back into our normal relationship. But that definitely took, work on building our connection.
Which is something we have to consistently work on is nurturing that connection, that being a principle as well. It's foundational. It always comes back to, making sure we're nurturing that connection, making sure that connection is strong. Our kids don't need us to be perfect. They need us to feel, they need to feel connected. They need to feel connected to us. So, And so often when we're trying to be perfect or we're trying to make everything perfect, then that's when everything falls completely apart because we're not focused on connection. We're focused on all this outside stuff and trying to make everything, I think about the holidays and trying to make the perfect, wonderful little holiday, but we're so busy we forget to be present, present in the moment. We had a trip not too long ago where we tended to frustrate H just a little bit, thinking we were creating the most perfect fun. You remember when we went ice?
Henry does not like to ice skate. And it's one of the few athletic endeavors that I'm decent at. And so I always want him to be into it too. And he's not. And it wasn't fun for him. And, we again struggled to try and kind of find a way to make it fun for him. And in the end, just had to recognize that, like, not everything is everybody's. And, it's okay that it's not his jam. Like, just like we struggle, as parents to, be perfect. We don't want to create a situation where then our child is doing, the same kind of thing and feeling like they're forced into a specific role.
Right.
And making sure, that they're not being forced into that either.
I was just thinking
But yeah,
about
it also kind of reminds me of when I was a kid and you were trying to, undo a little situation. My little brother had lost a tooth
oh.
and my mom forgot to put money under his pillow. And so she sent me to do it. And not realizing that at that point I was like 90% sure that the tooth fairy wasn't real,
I
but I
thought she
wasn't
knew at this point.
100% sure. And so that was my introduction. Like, okay, it's official. But it took until that moment. And so I remember talking about it years later, and she was horrified. I was like, actually, I kind of think that was the perfect transition from, believing to then getting to participate in the magic of it all. And so even though I think for her, for a little while, it
It
felt
felt
like
like a
something
parenting fail.
that was less than perfect. Yeah.
I forgot, and now here he was.
Parenting fail.
Mommy, the tooth fairy didn't come. I'm like, oh, geez. So Shannon, quick. I'm glad it turned out positive, and that often we think our parenting fails are just that, and it turns out they're not as bad as we thought. Another big one for me is just working and having the school. I mean, it took so much of our life, so much of our time. Because I was the owner administrator, and there were times even that you guys went to bed, or at least took a long
We
nap
fell asleep in the
at the
classroom.
school. So I had a lot of guilt, and I had a lot of resentment around that, and was really happy finding out later when you guys were adults that you only had good memories about it. You never felt like you were shortchanged somehow, and so that was good to find
Right.
out that wasn't a parenting fail either. So, but yeah, these times.
Yeah, I mean, my memories of being at the school when I was little, first of all, feeling like the queen of the castle because my mom was in charge. And like, I was, if mom's in charge, then obviously I'm like second in command. But yeah, I mean, it was cool to get to be a part of. And, as soon as I was old enough to not go, then I got to be, an assistant teacher up until the point that I could really be an actual assistant teacher, which was incredible. And like, as an adult looking back, there's so much I learned about child development, about, even parenting just by being around young children. And I feel like that, was invaluable and really beneficial then when I became a parent and, I had a preschool aged kiddo. And so, yeah, I don't have any negative feelings about it, but it is interesting, to compare that we have different experiences of the same circumstances.
And what it really boils down to, at the end of the day, it comes back to connection. And even though I was busy and everything was go, 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 we were connected, and you being there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I really was blessed because I got to have you at work with me. So we had that, it would have been harder if I was working long hours away from you, but at least we were still able to have that, to have that connection. But
Yeah, we just had to make a couple rules around the school to make sure we didn't have too much connection, and I stayed in my classroom and you got to actually do your
Yes,
work.
they would actually
But
misbehave. Both her and her brother would misbehave, so they'd get sent to the office. So we had to switch that around a little bit so that that's not where you came if you misbehave.
yeah, the consequences had to not be
Right.
going to the
And that
office.
we had to make it legitimate way for you to come visit so that you didn't feel like I
Mhm.
was being kept away from you. But yeah, so a lot of times too,
Yeah, to
it's
keep
just a
us from
matter
getting
of
spicy just so we could go see
yeah.
mom.
But that's part of it too, is figuring out, okay, this is the behavior that we don't want to be happening. So what is it saying? So it's saying they need to see me. They need, to have some time to connection. And how can we do that in a more positive way? But that often isn't what happens. We often have some weird behavior come up. Our child's acting a certain way. We don't know why. We're tired. We're frustrated. And we fall short. We start yelling or threatening or punishing. Of course, I never did that. But, except, a handful or dozen, thousand times. Anyway, what's important is that, we realize it when it happens. And we may also, when we do those things, it's really obvious. We know we've done it. But there might be times too when our kids just kind of disconnect and we see something's missing. So there's something there. So maybe we were really rushed and weren't being aware of them, or we were dismissive of something they were feeling or something they were trying to tell us, or we're distracted. And so they feel it. And, or maybe, they dump the eggs out over their head. Your brother did that one time. And we tend to, maybe we overreact when something spills. And so when that happens, our kids may withdraw. So it's just another time to notice that there's a disconnect, and we need to fix that. So whenever that happens, whenever we fall short, it doesn't mean we failed as parents, or that's a terrible bad thing. We can always come back and repair. So we don't have to be perfect, because we can come back and we can fix it. And the really beautiful thing about that is that it teaches our kids that they don't have to be perfect either. And that when we make mistakes, it's okay. We fix them. We figure out what to do instead. So many parents are afraid to apologize to their children. They think they're going to lose power or something, or it makes them not the authority. But it makes all the difference in the world to our connection and to our maintaining that relationship. Or when something disconnects, to be able to bring that back. We can just ask for a do-over.
And it doesn't have to be super formal either. Like, so yeah, we had, a little situation probably in the last week or so in my house. And, my husband was having a really long day, had had a really long day at work. He's got a partially torn rotator cuff, so he's a little extra cranky. And our son picked up on that and was just, seeming a little bit around his dad. And, my husband picked up on that too. And so, it took all of maybe 3 minutes. And they just, my husband acknowledged, like, hey, dude, this isn't how I want to be around you. This is not about you. But also, I need to do better and not let, whatever's going on with me bleed into our relationship, and apologize to him. And like literally within just a couple of minutes, everything's back to normal and everybody's good to go again. And so I think it's really important to highlight that it doesn't need to be a, sit down at the kitchen table and, we have this big, huge, long, drawn out conversation about stuff. It can just be part of our, day-to-day conversations. Something happens. Hey man, that wasn't ideal. Like, I'm sorry. I'll do better next time. And then we can all, move forward. But yeah, being able to see your parents really own their own stuff too, I think is really helpful for kids as they grow. And, I think that also then, teaches them what to expect of relationships when they're adults as well. And so you get this whole, process of it starting with your own parents, and then, informing how you show up as an adult someday in, adult relationships.
Which really boils down to our being real people, and letting our kids see us as real people. We don't have to be this authority or whatever. We're real. So,
Yeah.
but kids don't need perfect parents. They need real parents. Yeah. You brought up how Harry was acting also, and that just really talks to that behavior isn't communication just for our kids, but for us too. And it also tells the story of what might be going on for us, and that we need something too. So, when we have those moments, we just need to understand what's going on in the moment, what's going on for our kids developmentally. We need to understand, who is this child? What do they need in this instance? And then, am I flowing with that, or am I trying to make them something that they're not? Am I working with, their development with that inner essence that they have, or am I working against it? And, what preparations would make things go a lot easier. And then
I know one of the things we learned really early on with H is that if he's hungry,
oh yes,
everything else falls off. Like
yep.
That child, and it's super predictable. Like he gets super emotional, he gets super frustrated, whatever's going on, his emotions get massively heightened. And we're like, oh, when was the last time he ate?
Right.
And
yes,
sure
everybody in the family is very well aware that when H starts to get a little off, he probably needs food.
And so, at this point, we're decently good at being like, oh, let's, preemptively fix this situation before he loses it.
Because once he's there, he often doesn't want food, even though he needs it. So
I'm not hungry.
Yes.
But
yeah, that becomes a whole other
situation. But yeah, I mean, the more that you can, figure those kinds of little triggers out for your kids, does your child start to lose it when they're overtired? Does your child start to lose it, when they've been around other people for too long?
Right?
Overstimulated by, whatever's going on in the environment. And the more you can predict that and kind of work around it, the better it gets.
And again, we parent with more ease because we're being conscious and we're being aware. Well, so as we wrap up, we've got some tips for you. So when you're in that mode of feeling like you're trying to be the perfect parent, or you're failing miserably being the perfect parent, check in with yourself. What's going on for you? What do you need right now? What needs might you need to meet for yourself, as well as your child's, and be thinking about too, what do you want for who they're going to become? So, instead of trying to be perfect in this moment, play the long game. What do we need to do long term to make sure we have a nice, solid, connected relationship? And then give yourself grace, reframe, the situation, and then decide what is the right thing to do right now. Making sure that we really make that connection. That second tip, make sure we really hold that connection, that it really is all about connection. So even when perfection evades us, which it will, connection is what our kids really need. Because our third tip is that kids need real parents. So be real, just be you. And, show your kids that they don't have to be perfect either. And when they do, we all make mistakes. So our try this is, next time you have a perceived parenting fail, you yell, you threaten, whatever it is, ask for a do-over. I didn't like how that went. Could we try again?
I think that's great. Definitely asking for a do-over can just sort of take the gunk out of a situation. I don't know a better word for it than that, but it helps kids feel, back again to that connection, that parents are acknowledging that there's, something that wasn't ideal. And so it keeps that resentment from growing and just makes it so that, we can go back into a, calm, easeful relationship.
We can parent with more ease, peace, and joy. Thanks for joining us today on the Guiding Parent Podcast. Remember, behavior is communication. Connection leads to cooperation. And with understanding and intention, we can parent with greater ease, peace, and joy.
Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And we're here for you. Let us know in the comments what other topics you'd like to hear about.
Click the link in the show notes to subscribe to our newsletter, and visit the Guiding Mindset website for articles and resources to support you on your parenting journey.
Until next time, this is Tammy and Shannon with you on the journey.